Chapter 10. Please yourself. What happened to you this lunchtime? Chauncey and I sat like lemons waiting for you. Gib barged into my room after the barest knock. I'd been avoiding him all afternoon at school. I'd been avoiding everyone. But I knew he'd catch up with me eventually. Sorry, I muttered. Something else came up. Something more important than proving Dad's innocent. Gib exploded. I didn't answer. You don't give a monkey's what's happened to Dad, do you? All you care about is yourself. That's not true. Or fair. I leaped out of my chair. Something else came up that I had to deal with. That's all. And meanwhile, Eric's in the clear, and Dad might go to prison. I got Eric's phone number from the staff file we printed out and phoned his house. His wife said he was at work, so he hasn't skipped off to the Bahamas yet. But for all we know, he might be planning to leave at any second. Gib fumed. Talk sense, Gib, I snapped. What would he use for money? That million was found in Dad's account, not in his, and the bank hasn't reported any more money missing. That doesn't mean that Eric isn't up to something. Dad still needs our help. If you keep dossing about, Eric will get away, Gib said furiously. Then why don't you stop him? Why do you leave everything to me? I snapped back. If I knew how to use a computer to get the proof Dad needs, then I wouldn't bother you, Gib said. But I don't. And Chauncey might be good at computing, but he doesn't know the universal bank system. I said I was sorry. I sighed. Besides, I think I've worked out how it was done. But what if it's too late? I tried hard to hold on to my temper. I gritted my teeth and said, Gib, do you want to know my idea or not? You said yourself that Eric is at work, pretending everything is as normal. He has no idea that we're on to him. Gib glared at me. I guess I can't expect anything different from you. After all, my bedroom went deathly quiet. After all what? Go on, finish what you were going to say, I prompted. I was going to say, after all, you're only a girl. Gib finished. Yeah, I bet you were. I scoffed. Yes, I was, Gib replied. Well, now that you've said it, get lost. I barked at him. I've got things to do. Gib left the room, slamming my bedroom door shut behind him. I stared at the closed door. What was happening? I'd had more quarrels in the last few days than I'd had in the rest of my life, and I hated it. Can I get you anything, Mum? A cup of tea? Coffee? Do you want anything, Dad? Mum and Dad exchanged a rueful glance before they both turned to me. No thank you, Pumpkin, Dad smiled. It was 7 o'clock and we'd just finished dinner. I had helped Dad cook it, and I'd loaded the dishwasher all by myself without being asked. I'd even volunteered to mop the kitchen floor afterwards. This was it. Time to give Dad and Mum the letter from Miss Hiff. I couldn't put it off any longer, but I had to choose my moment. How are you feeling, Dad? I asked. I think I'll go and do my homework. Gib stood up quickly and scarpered. Coward. I feel fine, Victoria. Dad raised his eyebrows, but said nothing else. Mum, why don't you have a lay down? You should rest, I told her. I am resting, Mum replied. Mum and Dad exchanged another look. I wondered if I was overdoing it. I licked my lips nervously. Come on, Victoria, out with it. Dad laughed. The suspense is killing me. Out with what? I asked, plain innocent. Vicky, we might have been born yesterday, but it was early in the morning. Mum told me with a smile. What's the matter? Desperately, I tried to think of some suitable answer. Nothing came to my mind, so instead I decided on the truth. You're not supposed to get upset, Mum, I muttered. Oh dear, is it that bad? Mum sighed. I nodded slowly. Then I'll stay sitting down, Mum said. Now, what is it? Reluctantly, I dug into the pocket of my jeans and got out Miss Hiff's now severely crumpled letter. I gave it to Dad, who took it gingerly between his thumb and finger. Looking at it again, I had to admit that it did look rather manky. I watched as Dad opened the envelope. I'll put the envelope in the bin for you if you like, I offered eagerly, practically snatching the envelope out of his hands. Dad put the letter between him and Mum, and they both started reading. I had to force myself to walk, not run, from the room, but I walked really quickly. Once I was in the kitchen, I tore the envelope into tiny pieces and dropped them in the waste bin. At least the problem of the envelope was out of the way. Then I legged it out of the kitchen and up the stairs, or at least I tried. "Victoria, get down here!" Dad hollered before I'd even got halfway. I was tempted to pretend that I hadn't heard him. "Victoria, now!" Dad yelled. I turned around and walked back down, dragging my feet. My heart was pounding like a pneumatic drill, and tears welled up in my eyes. I suddenly felt so cold. I wondered if I should give in and cry and get Mum and Dad's sympathy up front. In spite of how slowly I was walking, I reached the living room. "I didn't do it. Honest, I didn't. I swear," I spoke before either of them had the chance. "It says here." "I didn't do it. It says here," Dad continued firmly, "that you hacked into Mrs. Bracken's PC account and read the maths file." Mum was shaking her head at me as Dad spoke. Both of their faces were stern, grim. "You've already made up your minds that I did it, haven't you?" I shouted at them. "You don't believe me, do you? You'd believe me if I were Gib." "What does that mean, young lady?" Mum's voice was ice cold. "You haven't even heard my side yet, but I'm guilty," I screamed at her, and suddenly all the hurt and anger that I'd been through over the last few days came flooding out of my mouth. "I bet you'd believe me if I was your real daughter. My real mum and dad would have believed me." Silence. I don't know who was more stunned at my words, me or Mum and Dad. I hadn't meant to say it. I didn't know where it came from. Then, again, maybe I did. Now that the words were out, they hung between us like a curtain. Something warm and salty ran into my mouth. Only then did I realise I was crying. "Victoria, how could you say that?" Mum said quietly. "If you say you didn't do it, then we believe you." "No, you don't," I sniffed. I saw the look on your faces." "You're not being fair, Victoria," Dad began. "Yes, I am," I argued. "You read Miss Hiff's letter and made up your minds instantly." "Well, it wasn't me. I know who really did it, and it wasn't me." "I think we all need to calm down, Victoria," Dad said. "I think you should go to your room." "With pleasure," I retorted. I ran out of the room and upstairs. Dad didn't call after me to walk, not run. That made me feel worse. Gib was on the landing at the top of the stairs, listening. He stood back when he saw me. I ran past him into my room, slamming the door shut. I threw myself down on the bed, burying my face in the pillow. Giving Mum and Dad the headmistress's letter hadn't gone the way I'd wanted it to go at all. I'd spent all afternoon rehearsing what I would say and how I would say it, but when the moment had arrived, why was nothing ever simple? I stood up and got out the photograph of my real mum and dad from my sock drawer. I returned to my bed and lay down on my back. Holding the photograph out in front of me, I felt so lonely. A few minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I ignored it, hoping whoever it was would go away. "Can I come in?" Dad popped his head around the door. I nodded reluctantly. Dad came into the room, carefully closing the door behind him. I sat up, but I couldn't look at him. I stared down at my duvet instead. Dad hovered in the middle of the room. "Victoria, your mum and I are worried about you," Dad began. "Why?" I mumbled. "I'm all right." "But you're obviously not. Have you any problems with the bank? Have all my problems with the bank made you angry at us? With me?" Shocked, I looked up. No, of course not." "Then what's the matter?" I shrugged, looking down again. Nervously, I laced the duvet in and out between my fingers. "Do you mind if I sit?" Dad asked. I shook my head. I felt the end of my bed sink as Dad sat down heavily, but I still couldn't look at him. "I know that sometimes it's difficult for you, Victoria," Dad said softly. "I know sometimes you feel like a sore thumb, especially when people see you with your mum and start staring at you. But I want to say one thing. As far as your mum and I are concerned, you are our daughter, as if you were born to us. Sometimes we have a job to remember that you weren't. But it makes no difference to how we feel about you. So that's why we treat you like our daughter, because that's who you are. If you think we don't treat you like that, then you're wrong. You're dead wrong. Do you understand, Victoria? Dad, I began tentatively. How should I put this? Dad, are you and Mum sometimes sorry that you adopted me? Never, Dad replied immediately. Never, ever. Why did you adopt me? I asked, my head still bent. Well, Dad began slowly, we put our names down to be foster parents, and when your parents were killed, and it was found out that you had no close relatives, the social services asked us if we would foster you. And of course, once we'd seen you, there was no way we could give you back, even when we unexpectedly discovered that Laura was pregnant with Gibbs. So we applied to adopt you. Oh, I see, I said. Weren't you sorry when you knew you were going to have Gib? Of course not, Dad said. We fought and still think we're the luckiest people in the world. I bet lots of people told you not to adopt me, I whispered. 1 or 2 people. Laura and I soon told them where to go. Your Aunt Beth was one of the few people who understood our decision. She was great. She really supported your mum and me. Dad smiled. Victoria, you can't go through life trying to please everyone. You'd never do it. It's impossible. You just end up pleasing no one. So you just have to please yourself. Maybe that was my problem. Maybe I was trying to please too many people. Gib and Chauncey, Maggie and Gail. And in trying to please everyone, I'd end up pleasing no one. All right then, Dad said, his tone of voice changing to become more firm. Now, tell me about this maths exam business from the beginning. Picking my way carefully through the words, I told him, leaving out the bit about opening a letter. I implied that Miss Hiff had told me what I was supposed to be guilty of in her office. You said downstairs that you know who the real culprit is, Dad said when I'd finished. Yeah, I guess. Are you guessing, or do you know? Dad asked sternly. I know. Who is it? I can't tell you. It's someone from your school, Dad asked after a moment's silence. Yes. A friend? She's not my friend anymore, I sighed. I told her that if she didn't tell Miss Hiff the truth, then I would. Are you going to? Dad asked. Slowly, I shook my head. Victoria, I can understand that you don't want to tell tales, but I can't tell you, Dad. I just can't, I pleaded. Dad frowned. Why does Miss Hiff say in her letter that you admitted to breaking into Mrs. Bracken's answer file? Dad asked after a moment's pause. Because she asked me if I'd got the answers by using a program, and I did. Oh? I used a programmable calculator you and Mum bought me for Christmas to get the answers, I said reluctantly. You wrote a program on it? Dad asked. That's right. And when she asked me, I thought she was talking about writing a program on that, when instead she was talking about Mrs. Bracken's PC, Dad concluded. I nodded. Victoria, you know you shouldn't have used your calculator like that in a maths exam, Dad said. That's not why we bought it for you. I know, I thought I was being clever, I admitted. It didn't occur to me until Crackly Bracken went nuclear that I maybe shouldn't have done it. Dad's lips twitched. There's no maybe about it. You shouldn't have done it. I trust you're not going to do it again? No fear, I replied instantly. Right. I'm down at school first thing tomorrow morning to get this sorted out. Dad stood up. Now, you finish your homework and then come downstairs and I'll give you a game of chess. He walked to the door. Dad, was Mum upset? I had to know. Dad said, a little, but she'll be all right. I'm sorry, I whispered. That's okay, Pumpkin, he said. You wouldn't be my daughter if you didn't get strange ideas sometimes. I smiled as he left the room. I felt a lot better now that I'd had a proper chat with Dad. No sooner did my bedroom door shut than it opened again. Hi, Vicky. Are you okay? Gib asked, hovering just inside the door. Yeah, I'm fine. What do you want? I said, ungraciously. You said you had an idea about how to prove Eric's the crook, not Dad, Gib replied. I sighed. Would it kill Gib to say he was sorry, just once, if he ever apologised to me for anything? I would pass out from severe shock. I was thinking about it today, I said, bouncing off to bed. I reckon I've worked out why the date and time of the time TRV object file are a whole day after the program got linked. I'm listening, Gibbs said, as he came into the room and sat down in my chair. I sat at the edge of my bed. Well, I was thinking about how I tried to get money from the bank, I said eagerly. If I didn't have access to the cashier's user accounts, and I could write a program to do it, I reckon it would be quite simple if I knew what I was doing. Go on. I changed a noddy program days before it was needed to contain one of those time trap things that Dad was talking about. One of the programs that runs every night. Then on a certain day, at a certain time, the money would get transferred. I get you, Gibbs said, leaning forwards. But how would you get round the acceptance testers? They check all the source programs to make sure there's nothing in them that shouldn't be there. Ah, but suppose I changed the noddy program that did something pretty boring to include the time trap code I wanted to transfer money about. I could compile it so I'd have an object file, then re-edit the source code to take my time trap code out. And that's what you'd give to the acceptance testers, Gibbs said with a slow smile. He was always fast on the uptake. Exactly. I'd wait for them to check the source program and compile it, and then I'd overwrite their object file, which doesn't contain the time trap, with the object file which does. Gibb and I smiled at each other. And it would be that object file that they linked and ran. Of course, they wouldn't see any sign of the time trap because that bit of code wouldn't run until the date and time I had already specified. Very clever, Gibb whistled. But what about the other object file? Why was it dated one day ahead of the link file? Think about it. You fiddled about with all of those files, and you know they've all got different dates and times. The only file that you want left on the system that contains any of your time trap program would be the linked file. So after time TRV had been linked, you then overwrite the object file with a clean version of exactly the same thing. Then there's less chance of the fiddle being detected. Except that the date of the object file is different in the batch library, Gibb pointed out. But who would notice that? Why would they even check that? Once it goes through the acceptance testers, all anyone cares about are the files on the live system, not on the development system. And only the linked files get copied across to the live system, I said, practically bouncing off the bed by this time. And if it wasn't for you printing off the batch library file on the development system accidentally, Gibb grinned, and your brilliant eyesight, I beamed, then no one would be any the wiser, Gibb said. Oh, that's terrific. That has to be the way it was done, I said. Don't you think? I don't see any other way it could be done, Gibb agreed. For the first time in ages, I actually began to feel good. We were getting closer and closer all the time. I felt sure that was how it was done. I couldn't help but feel a little bit clever. Then my smile faded. Now that brings us to Eric and why he put the £1 million in Dad's account. Do you think more than £1 million was taken? Gibb asked. I'm sure of it. I frowned. The thing is, why hasn't the bank discovered more missing money yet? They knew pretty quickly that Dad had the money in his account, Gibb said. And we must be talking about an awful lot of money being taken out if Eric can stick £1 million into Dad's account just like that, I said. Not yet, Gibb said slowly. Pardon? Maybe the rest of the money, the real money that Eric was after, hasn't been transferred yet. Gibb's eyes sparkled. Of course, I breathed. If you can set up one time trap, why not set up two? That way, you get the bank chasing in the wrong direction until it's too late. So Eric put the money in Dad's account just to get the bank going round in circles. It's more than that. I think he didn't want Dad's check-in program to run either. He must have been afraid that it would pick up something. The way we did, Gibb said. I nodded. So, what about Eric and our proof? Gibb asked. I need to find a PC. Sorry, I need a PC to find any. I sighed. This is pure speculation. If we did tell Dad and the bank, Eric could cover his tracks with no trouble at all. Then Dad would still be in trouble. Where are you going to find a PC? Gib asked. The ones at school are out. The computer club is on tomorrow lunchtime, and the computing evening classes will be running tomorrow night. Unless we try to get into the school in the early hours of the morning. I don't fancy that much. I grimaced. To tell the truth, neither do I, Gib admitted. That made me feel a whole lot better. So what do we do? Our heads in our hands, Gib and I gave it some real serious thought. Then I had the best idea I'd had all year. Gib, Aunt Beth's got a PC. She can log on to the bank's computer from home, the same way Dad can. I sprang off the bed. She'll let us borrow it, no problem, Gib said enthusiastically. But we can't tell her why we want to use it, I said fiercely. That's between you and me until we have something Dad can take to the police about his so-called friend Eric. I didn't want Gib to get any funny ideas. All right, don't take my head off, Gib protested. When should we ask her? We'll pop round tomorrow, after school, I said. Gib frowned. But aren't she and Sebastian going to Rio the day after? So, they'll be busy packing and stuff. They're not going to pack the PC, I said, and we'll tell them we'll be quick. We could use the same homework excuse you used with Rosa, the evening class tutor. Yeah, it was good, wasn't it? Gib said modestly. I ducked down. What are you doing? Gib asked curiously. Just trying to get out of the way of your big head, I told him. Gib laughed. You're just jealous, he replied. Right then, let's get this sorted. We'll meet up at the school gates after school and go to Aunt Beth's together. I grinned. You're on. Tomorrow night, we're going to get Eric good and proper once and for all.